Ready? I'm Roland Muller. I was I guess you'd say, the chairman of the founding committee. And longtime English teacher. Hey, by the way, I taught every artsy that went through this school for 15 years. The only one. Janice only had a few dancers.
One could say you've got a lot to answer for.
That's true. Well, I guess now we turn it to Larissa, who is a former graduate, successful graduate, one of our finest, just to do a little reminiscing.
Well,
Shouldn't she have a light on her? I mean, she's sitting there dark. What is this?
I can try.
Well,
Hey,
they
look,
come-
this is a whole lot better.
They
than
come
the
through in
video.
the end. But in
We're
between,
really
God
tense.
help us.
It's still gonna be a whole lot better than the video I did for grade 9 English.
Yeah, that's because you didn't have me.
I did.
You did?
Absolutely.
He
2
did?
years- 2 years I'm in this class.
And,
Would you fail?
and this is the result of what you did, Roland?
God help me, what
I'd
a...
say it wasn't you.
It's
just
a good
you
thing
were
I brought
off in
one
your
success
mind.
story at
Created
the
by
As I
someone
said,
else.
you've got a lot to answer for, brother.
What was his name again?
Ooh,
Tim.
I'm almost offended that he
This
doesn't.
is Josh.
Josh.
Okay?
Okay.
So Josh, you've been at how long?
13 years.
13 years. Extraordinary techie. Wanted to be backstage all the time running the shows. So,
Huh.
and you got him into it, Rolly. He's
Holy
You're one of the
Jesus.
people that walked him backstage.
Forcibly, in fact.
Well, it's Alzheimer's, what can I tell you? I mean,
People would look up.
well, Larissa, you're gonna get all of us crying here if you keep going, you know? So, feel free to pop in later with anything that comes to your mind, right?
Give me 1 second.
You ready?
Yep, we should be able to continue.
Should be. I don't like that conditional. Are we rolling or aren't we?
We're definitely rolling.
Okay.
We got at least 13 minutes before I have to do it.
Okay. Larissa, your comments actually are just about as, what you've done is you've summed up the essence of the arts package. Now, me being a man of few words, and I've heard your ideas from a lot of students, right? And we've often said to ourselves, what we do at Eastwood, we give artsies a home. And that's sort of the bottom line of what you were describing, and it's the single most important thing that Eastwood does for these kids. The curriculum is great, the skills are great, but the feeling of being home is what keeps them coming and makes them remember. By the way, just a little story before I turn it over to the master of music here. How did we come up with the name Artsies? Well, it's a natural name, but I still remember the first class, the first year. They were delicate little creatures in grade 9, and they came running to me and said, Mr. Muller, they're calling us Artsies. And Mr. Hickey, I think, was with me at that time, and we both started to laugh. And then, what are you laughing at? Well, you are Artsies. What do you expect them to call you, But out of that came, I think it was actually Janice's idea, Mrs. Stone's idea, that we started to use in printed material Arts-E. Arts Eastwood, right? So that's sort of the moment that idea was born, and no one really worries about being called artsy anymore. They know that that's a term of to be proud of,
It's a badge. You wear it with pride.
Wear it with pride.
I think you certainly.
Of the other high schools.
Let me just let me interrupt and really make that point, Wolf, because it's really important. The only guy whose neck was really on the line was Mr. Baxter. We could do anything, and we were classroom teachers. What are they going to do to us? Demote us, right? So we were safe in that sense in doing radical and crazy things. Mr. Baxter, on the other hand, has to answer to all kinds of weird people up in the Ed Center, and they're going to say, hey, don't you control your school? Who are these nutcases that are doing all these crazy things? So he was really out on a limb, and I really admire him for grabbing the ball and didn't bat an eye, and he fought the battles, which frankly some of which I didn't even know about. He didn't brag about it. He just did it. Okay, go ahead.
For that.
Do we call Wilf for Mr. Baxter? What do we call these people that are all up here? Well, what's the difference?
Grandpa.
Yeah. John, would you like to add something?
Well,
feel the impact of.
Well, you know, you have a talent for putting a lump in people's throats. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of in the arts package, now a little bit of background, in a bureaucracy like the school board, there are many, many, many committees, and we were, of course, a committee. And in that bureaucracy, the value of a committee is usually measured by the amount of paper that it generates, so that it can send memos and minutes to all various levels of bureaucracy, and they can pore over them and buy new filing cabinets to put them into, and all this sort of thing. The arts package never generated anything. We didn't even take minutes at our meetings. And yet, when decisions were made and jobs were handed out, they never failed to get accomplished. That's a level of people that we were working with. Of a verbal decision, bang, it was done. The only paper we generated in the entire 15 years I was here, in one form or another, is the Arts Package Information Booklet, which really was a job of the Arts Package Parents Committee, with our input, of course. And this contains everything you ever want to know about the Arts Package. Short, sweet, and it's very loaded with information. Just in case I forget, the Arts Package Parents Committee, I don't know if we would have survived without them. They're a group of parents that are second to none. They, you know, okay, a personal note. I was personally extremely gratified when the Arts Package parents were comfortable enough to come into this school, and a high school can be pretty intimidating for someone who isn't a teacher or a student there, feel comfortable here, walk into the staff room, sit down, have a coffee, chat with the staff, not just the Arts Package staff, but the staff generally, become known to the staff, and just feel like they're at home too, in a way. And that was one of the more gratifying moments for me. So there was this document. Here is one piece of paper. This makes the Arts Package run, right here. This is it. For 25 years, this program has run on the information on this piece of paper. It's got the philosophy, and it's got 9 points of precise implementation, practical. This is how the students are going to be affected by that philosophy. And the only other paper we generated was in one. Now these things have of course changed over the years as there's been adjustments. Not the philosophy though. The only other thing is, well, two other things. One, the interview process, 2 pages. That's all we needed for our interview process. And the information for the public schools. A poster and various papers for which explain each of the specialized. This logo, of course, was done by an Arts Package student. Nita, have you seen this lately?
Oh, that logo? Yeah, it comes up
yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah, right. A student did that. I forget who it was. Janice, do you remember? It was Graham. I got a story about Graham.
He was one of the originals.
One of the originals.
Yeah.
I got a story. You're gonna. This is another one of those things you just don't forget. He was one of the originals. The first interview. He came to the interview with his parents. I was on the interview panel at that point, on that one that had him. And his parents said, I don't even know why I'm here. They said, he dragged us here. He made us come. We don't even know what this is about. They didn't say it quite as flippantly as I am, but that was the basic message, right? And so we proceeded with the interview, and they were sort of, as good parents are, a little reserved. This is something new. Do we really want this? You know, they were taking a sort of a laid-back approach to it. And then at the end of the interview, I'd gotten to know Graham at this point, and I said to him, okay, I said, I'll bet you a Coke that he's going to be in the program next year. They said, okay. And then they went on their way. First week of school, Graham was in the class. During the first week, at some point, he comes into class with a Coke. This is from my parents. So yeah, on that note, people, I mean, there's other teachers, other people involved in education, frequently wonder what in heaven's name makes the Arts Package teacher community do what they do, because we're talking about like thousands of hours of time that is really not part of your job at all. It's just something you do because you want to do it. And as I say, I can't overstate the amount of time that's involved. Weekends, holidays, evenings, it's just endless. And of course, the answer is fairly obvious, sort of what you were saying. You do it because the kids are worth it. And you've just spent 3-4 hours, of your own time doing something related to the arts with the kids, and they click, and it's great, and it looks beautiful, and it makes it all worth it. And just to finish that one off, as you know, I taught the English students, I taught the arts package students English, and I just was going through my stuff there, and I came across this. This is an English project. Just look at the length of that thing. It is the entire play, Romeo and Juliet, rewritten in modern English. The entire play. In amongst the rewriting are songs, song lyrics. The student, her name was Sarah Heaney, last year the year I retired, and she gave me this as a kind of retirement gift. And everything in bold are the lyrics of a song that she either wrote or that would fit to a song that's available. So, when you get work like this, it's worth the extra time. And I think that's probably what motivates most of the arts package teachers too. That's the one you want to use, by the way.
It's not just school, it's a way of life.
Well, anyway.
It's a way
See,
of life.
I think you proved the point. Students would often come to me here in their last year, when we still had grade 13 before I retired, but they'd come and they'd say, "Sir, do you think I should go on in music?" And my answer to them was very blunt. If you're asking me, the answer is no. If you have to do it because you can't do anything else, the answer is yes. And I think that's what you're saying, and I think that's so important. If you're waiting for somebody to tell you, "Oh yes, you should do that," now I know what the student was asking. Mm-hmm. Do I have the talent? Do I have the potential to be able to succeed? And I would have said yes to that. But unless you have that inner drive, which you're describing, forget it. It just won't work.
Point out the original 7 members of the Arts Package Steering Committee. And they were, of course, myself, Mr. Daniels, Mr. Moses, that's 3. Now, we had Mr. Joyce, who was drama, Mr. Chappell, now deceased, who was guidance, because when you're going to run a major program, you got to have the logistics of guidance behind you. Mr. Hickey, who was in charge, he was the head of special ed, and that's a very important point I want to come back to. And Mrs. Hughes, who was the female head of phys ed. Now, in those days, do they still have female heads? No, huh? It's sexist, right? So in those days, we had 2. We had a male head and a female head. Now, Mrs. Hughes, I got to give a special tribute to, because it goes back to what Mr. Bax was saying earlier, that the school was a community. So there was no problem for us asking a phys ed teacher to represent dance, which is what we were short of in our committee. We had to have somebody to speak for dance. And she spoke. If you know anything about Sally Hughes, she's going to speak. And she made sure that the dance was a totally equal partner in the arts package curriculum, and I give her full credit for that. I also want to sort of highlight Mr. Hickey's role, because it was absolutely crucial. You see, we've talked about how everything got started, and we got the planning in place, we had the curriculum in place, but then comes a critical moment when we have to come out of the closet. Nobody even knew about us. We have to go to the public schools and let them know that there's a program here that we want kids to come to. And as Mr. Baxter touched on, the public schools are not going to be terribly sympathetic to us cherry-picking some of the best students out of their feeder school, the school they're feeding, and bringing them to Eastwood. So there was going to be resistance. But somehow we had to get the word out there. And I have to give Mr. Hickey full credit. He was a one-man publicity storm. He went to every public school. He went to guidance meetings. He twisted arms. He just had he pulled out all the stops to let the public schools know that there's a new program at Eastwood. Without that, I don't think we would have had the students. I don't think we would have got the students that we needed to start the first year. So we seem to have in our little group everything we needed when we needed it. Now you might be surprised, Mrs. Price wasn't in that original group, right? Because she wasn't on staff, and Mr. Baxter might have a few comments to say about how we ended up with this. By the way, Mrs. Price, of course, we all know, became the mother of the arts package, right? But in those first year, during the planning stages, we had no mother yet. So it's a good thing she came along, because you can't have a mother and go without a mother, right?
The motto of this school, going back to its organization, Ex Oriente Lux, from the east comes light. And hopefully, the arts program is shedding that light over 25 years and will continue to do so.
I think we can say that without reservation, don't you?
Well
do they
said.
do they still sing the school song?
Oh, yeah.
Did darn well better.
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
you never know in this politically correct age.
Well,
No,
yeah,
you
What's
don't
gone
know
by the
right.
board?
You got that right.
Glad I'm
Yeah.
not in it.
We can't
Do we
have.
still have the lion?
We
or
can't
is Johnny
have,
Redback yet?
We can't have rebels and all that.
Still the lion?
Yeah.
You know, someday you guys in the arts package, the students, it's teachers I haven't got the guts, but the student, you gotta get the Johnny Redback.
The Rebbe back?
Yeah.
See, I was lucky. Johnny Rebel lasted through almost my entire
Pardon?
high school
What a bunch of
graduate
trouble.
on the
You
line
know,
in
this
my
whole-
grade 12.
Yeah,
Isn't it the
lion.
50th
Give me a
anniversary
break.
that they did
What do we got to
They
do
were
with
They
lions?
were trying to get rid of Johnny. We got rid of